And I would say my Democrat colleague said, well, gosh, it's standard practice not to tell a judge the number you're subpoenaing. It is not standard practice to subpoena 20% of the Republicans in the Senate and the opposing party. And I'm confident my Democrat colleagues would be really pissed if the Trump DOJ subpoenaed 20% of the Democrats in the Senate and concluded with no basis in fact that the mere fact that they are Democrats demonstrates that Senator Hirono can respond.
You won't believe the showdown that just went down in the Senate. Ted Cruz had enough of Democrat antics and absolutely roasted Mazie Hirono in front of the entire chamber. This was more than just a verbal sparring match. It exposed how far some Democrats will go to intimidate and weaponize the justice system. Stay tuned, because I'm breaking down every fiery moment, what it means for Republicans, and why this fight is about defending law, order, and American integrity. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Right Focus so you never miss the truth being told.
Senators subject to subpoena should be notified that they could pass the law. Well, magically, we used a time machine to do that because Congress passed that into law in 2004. It is in the United States Code. It is black-lettered law, and Judge Boasberg disregarded that. Now, he did so at the invitation of Jack Smith. And I would say my Democrat colleague said, well, gosh, it's standard practice not to tell a judge the number you're subpoenaing. It is not standard practice to subpoena 20% of the Republicans in the Senate and the opposing party. And I'm confident my Democrat colleagues would be really pissed if the Trump DOJ subpoenaed 20% of the Democrats in the Senate and concluded with no basis in fact that the mere fact that they are Democrats demonstrates that Senator Hirono can respond, but you can. I'm happy to recognize you to respond, but I would ask you not to interrupt me because I am not interrupting you. I am certain my Democrat colleagues would be unhappy if the Trump DOJ, I'm asking you not to interrupt me, Senator Hirono. I did not interrupt you. I am speaking now, and I will recognize you to respond when I conclude in speaking. I am confident my Democrat colleagues would be deeply unhappy if the Trump DOJ subpoenaed 20% of the Democrats in the Senate and concluded the mere fact that they're Democrats means they are likely to be criminals. And I do want to note also, my prediction that no senator would mention Judge Boardman's name proved wrong with the penultimate Democrat speaker. Senator Hirono did mention her name, and 100% of what she said is the decision is on appeal. And I would welcome any of my Democrat colleagues to say that Judge Boardman's decision to deviate downwards by 22 years to reward an assassin, an attempted assassin, the Supreme Court justice is anything but disgraceful, brazen, and encouraging more political assassinations. To defend it is anything other than a complete dereliction and abuse of her oath of office. Senator Hirono, you're welcome to respond.
You know, you talk about using facts. Well, the law that we refer to is not exactly clear on who bears the responsibility for asking who the heck's records are being subpoenaed. And by the way, if you want to blame somebody for the fact that 20% of Republican senators' records were subpoenaed, you can blame President Trump because he's the one who was calling all of you, or he had his minions calling all of you. So there you go. That's all I have to say.
You know, it is an amazing statement that Democrats now believe that the fact that a member of the Senate speaks to the President of the United States is sufficient to subpoena their phone records and presume they are criminals.
Why don't we move
because,
on?
Senator, you don't get to say move on because you don't have the gavel, but I will say this. Sad to say, well, perhaps if you hadn't presided over a disastrous economy and an open border and wars across the globe, you might still have the majority, but you don't. And my point is very simple. It is not a criminal conduct to speak with the President of the United States, and it is ludicrous to suggest that it is.
And of course, I didn't make that suggestion, so that's why I'm saying, can we move on with this?
All right, Right Focus viewers, let's get into it. What we just witnessed is exactly why Ted Cruz is one of the most fearless defenders of the Constitution in the Senate today. He stood his ground while Mazie Hirono repeatedly tried to interrupt him, and he didn't hold back in calling out the Democrats' abuse of power. Cruz pointed out that the law is clear. Judges must notify senators when they are subject to subpoenas, yet Judge Boasberg ignored it at the urging of Jack Smith. This isn't just a small procedural misstep. It's a blatant disregard for the law, and it shows how the Democrats are willing to bend the rules to target Republicans. Then Cruz went even further, exposing the hypocrisy. He highlighted that Democrats subpoenaed 20% of Republican senators' records and implied criminality just because they spoke with the president. Imagine if the roles were reversed. Republicans would never allow 20% of Democrats to be treated this way. This is political weaponization at its finest, and Cruz wasn't having any of it. He also condemned Judge Boardman's sentencing decision for an attempted assassin of a Supreme Court justice, calling it disgraceful, brazen, and dangerous. Cruz is making it clear that protecting the rule of law isn't optional, it's mandatory, and anyone who deviates from that standard is threatening American safety and justice. Throughout the exchange, Cruz repeatedly told Hirono not to interrupt him, a simple plea for basic decorum, yet necessary in a chamber where Democrats often try to dominate the conversation with interruptions and theatrics. He made the point crystal clear: speaking to the president is not a crime, and Democrats' attempts to twist it into one is pure political theater. This isn't just politics as usual, this is a fight for the integrity of our institutions. Ted Cruz showed courage, clarity, and commitment to law and order. He stood up for Republicans, the Constitution, and every American who believes in fair play under the law. Right Focus viewers, this is exactly the kind of Senate fight we need to see more of: unapologetic, firm, and grounded in principle. If you agree, hit that like button and subscribe now so you don't miss our coverage of every battle like this in Washington.